That was Erica. She's the OT. She's the occupational therapist.
Yeah, I keep promoting him.
All right, we hopefully back on, so we're going to ask Councilmember Brost and Councilmember Hopper. Councilmember Brost might need to be added back in as a panelist. All right, let's make sure. Councilmember Brost, are you still able to connect with us? I see that you're going off mute, so that might be a positive sign. There he is. Thumbs up. That means he hears us, right? Nod yes. All right, Councilmember Hopper, we're good? All right, excellent. Thank you all for your patience while we work through the technical work here. And sorry if we didn't have that video on before. So we're back on here and we're going to, we just finished the approval of the minutes. So what we're going to do right now, I'm going to ask the council here if we can reorder the agenda. We do have two members here from the public that spoke regarding an item that is towards the end of the agenda, and as a courtesy, move that item up first. And so that this way, if they choose to decide to go after this, they're more than welcome to. But motion, we need a motion on that. Councilmember Jaxie, seconded by Councilmember Farmer, to rearrange the order of the agenda so that we will cover the policy on the public dedication of private streets. That motion again is made. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Right. And we are now going to cover that item. So I'm going to hand it over to Rick Brown.
I'm sorry. Thank you, council members. So we're going to talk about the public dedication of private streets. And I wanted to reference the memo that I prepared for the committee earlier. I did want to clarify a couple points based on what Mr. Van Nest had said earlier on the public comment. I provided in the memorandum the original resolution and the amended resolution. The amended resolution had the changed language that I tried to provide in plain English on my memo within it already incorporated. So I think the desire is to refrain from the legalese potentially and reword it. That's kind of what I'm hearing, which I would think we could do that, but I would need to make that change to the actual policy. That should not be a problem, assuming John Young is not going to disapprove that. But I get the concern and the desire to make things read easier for the layman. I agree 100% with that because I have that same experience. So that would need to be made, and we could certainly do that going forward. Relative to the sign, I think that would be fine if you all are agreeable to removing the sign posting requirement. I think we could live with that as well. Other than that, if you would like, we could also potentially put that on the shoulder of Public Works. If you feel the sign requirement is a good idea, we could go that route as well and just say the city will put the sign out. I think either way would be fine. So with that, I guess I will end and address any other questions. But I guess if the committee passes the motion, we would then send this back to the city council for further, hopefully for approval at the next meeting.
Okay, so thank you, Rick, on that. So we did hear a comment that the language is good the way it is. So the comment regarding the signage, we did hear opinion during public comment about that. Good to hear, Rick, that you mentioned there's some flexibility on that. So we could either have the city choose to do something, whether it's maybe one sign at the entrance of the subdivision advising it, or on all the alleys as was originally specified. And then I think that was it that was covering what we have here. So let me see if there's any questions or comments regarding this item here. Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I think all those changes are good. I would maybe just say with the signage, I mean, I think it makes sense that the city would do that if it's necessary, but I would kind of leave it up. Like, I think you could either do the letter to the residents or a sign. Both seems kind of redundantly expensive for no reason. I don't,
Maybe I'll comment on that.
Yeah.
You know, I think to be consistent with planning and zoning, even though they're separate items, you know, planning and zoning has a process where they do a mailing and they post a sign on the property. So maybe there is just one sign that's put in a prominent location where everyone drives through that would at least, again, provide some form of written notice in case someone doesn't open their mail. I think that redundancy is important for that. And if the city is willing to do that, I don't think we'll encounter these that often. You know, we only have so many alleys, so therefore I think, I think it's reasonable to do that. And then I think too, the other thing to consider if a motion is made is what Rick said about the policy, right? That the policy would need to be dated. Yeah, right, Rick?
The language that is in the current amended policy would need to be replaced with the language that's in the memo essentially to make it more readable. Yes.
Okay, so I think, Rick, you would look for a motion that covers the policy, the sign, and then basically approving what's here in the resolution. Councilmember Fauna.
I'll make the motion.
Councilmember Jaxi. So we have that motion. Michelle, are you getting that motion down or do you need us to repeat it?
Yes, repeat it, please.
So the motion is to, Rick, would you say it's not, we're not adopting it, what we're recommending to the council, the resolution here?
You're recommending to send the amended resolution back to the city council
Yeah.
with the changes as recommended.
The changes is recommended.
Yeah, which would be the change of the contract language and the change to the sign placement by the department.
Rick, do you think we can get that by the actual next council meeting?
Yes, sir. That's my hope.
Cool.
Okay, so we have that motion on the floor. Any other questions, comments on that? All right.
So recommended to send the amended resolution with changes. And then you stated also a change in policy.
Revision of the policy to align with the resolution. Is that right, Rick? Or how would you want to phrase that?
We're going to amend the policy to incorporate the language from the memorandum and also modify the sign requirement to be placed by the Department of Public Works, not the HOA.
All right.
Thank you.
I see no other hands up then. All those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. All right, congratulations to the speakers here. Hopefully we'll get this resolved for you as soon as possible. We will miss you. We'll want you to come back. We like having you come back. All right, thank you. All right, so back to the regular order of the agenda. We're going to go to administration for action, which is number one, the review of the city's biannual Gazette publication. I'm going to refer now over to our interim city administrator, Thomas Lee.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. So with this report, what I is the department has done, went through and just wanted to note, really, there's no serious recommendation here. It's just really going to the committee and seeing what additional review might be needed just based off our Gazette costs that have been coming in. Over the last year or so, we have seen a substantial increase in the cost that we from going up from $23,229 all the way up to $26,138. Luckily, we did save about $700 in design costs for the Spring Gazette based off of just streamlining the communication with Colby Company. That being said, they did increase their rate from $115 to $125. So those savings weren't actually realized. And on top of that, we do actually pay Swift Print Communications quite a bit of money just to actually print the actual Gazette itself. So what I was looking for here is just an open discussion and input from the committee about the biannual Gazette, the frequency that we send it out, because at this point the city is spending about $52,000 per year on this. And what I referenced in the report as well is that in the citizen survey that we sent out last year, we did receive feedback that only about 9% of our residents prefer the Gazette as their primary means of receiving communication. So in this case, we were just, the department's trying to do here is just to kind of get some input from the committee on the cost of the Gazette increasing and what alternative methods we could potentially use if we were to move to maybe an annual Gazette, or potentially, replace it with a cheaper alternative paper. There's a couple different options, but I did want to get that input from the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here for any questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in general, I do like the Gazette, but I do think it's really expensive, and the way that we have kind of chosen to do it a few times is extra expensive. The size of it, some of the other costs seem like maybe at the very least we should probably put them out to bid if that's a way that we do things instead of just assigning it to somebody, put an RFP out. But I think from an online standpoint, there is a service that is basically free that would probably be better to publish it to. It would help us to track what people are looking at and how long they might be spending on it, rather than just hosting it on our website as a PDF. It's a lot more interactive link. So the pages flip and you can have photos that move around and things like that. And it's basically free. So I'd be happy to talk to whoever does that and walk them through how to do it. But that's a lot of money for a handful of people to get this big thing that in most cases just winds back up in the recycle bin. So I'm all for simplifying and downsizing from a budget number, the Gazette.
Councilmember Clark.
I like having the biannually sent out Gazette, because I don't think we can base how many people are reading the Gazette by the people who respond online, because those are usually the people that, the ones that are just reading the Gazette and getting their information from that might not be the ones that are looking at the website. And or maybe they don't have access to it. But I really think that a lot of people use it more than the 9% that we're getting, the responses we're getting. And yeah, it looks like we spend a lot on it's the substrate, the paper that we use is extreme. Maybe some less expensive form of the same thing that we could put out that would still be color, and we could look at different things like if it costs a lot to have the proofreading and just going back over it and re-looking at it again by this company, maybe we could get local school teachers, English teachers to look at it and get them involved with what's going on as well as volunteers. But I would keep the biannual timing for this, because there's a lot of things that go on that some of us in the past have not had internet access all the time and would like to have just the paper copy. And a lot of people, maybe it's because of disabilities or something that they would rather have the paper copy than look online for the information as well. I just think communication is key.
Other comments? All right, Councilmember Farmer.
Hey, I guess maybe Tom, this is for you. So in terms of the graphic design, the Colby Co thing, are they physically laying this entire Gazette out, or is that for like independent graphic design within the Gazette?
So how it works is we, as a city staff, we come together and with input from the council and the mayor, kind of decide what articles will be included, and then from there the staff actually drafts the articles. We write everything that's in there. We provide that in copy, usually PDF or Word form. We provide that to Colby Co, who is the design and graphic design firm, who pretty much organizes and formats the actual Gazette itself. From there, and just from my personal position myself, I work with them specifically to make sure there's no typos, make sure the there's no grammatical mistakes, and that it looks good. But really all they're doing is organizing it at the end of the day and getting it ready in Publisher. It is a tedious task because we give them just raw files and we say, hey, let's get this together and make sure it's on 16 pages. That being said, there's also a point that we could probably save some money. That could take some significant time unless we would have someone that might be a graphic designer that has those skills. But yeah, we give them practically raw files and they put it together as what you see when you get the actual handheld pamphlet.
So maybe I'll make a comment on this. I do think the rising cost to prompt us to take a look and see how we could make it more efficient. You know, Councilmember Clark made a good point, the quality of the paper. Maybe there is a different type of paper that would be, and the size as well. Maybe it's just revisiting, you know, how much content goes in there and using other alternative methods to communicate as well. I think there are options there. So, you know, maybe we could ask the interim city administrator to look at, you know, I see that you've noted here several communication alternatives here, but maybe look to see some of those ideas that were shared tonight as far as how you would maybe try to reduce that cost in the publication. So as we still preserve the twice a year, but hopefully at a lower cost. And then we can still communicate through other means like our website, e-newsletter, but also maybe explore some other options. I know I've seen some other cities. The city of Eureka takes out a regular full-page ad in the Eureka Leader, and that's, you know, a paper that we even get here in Wildwood, at least in some areas. So maybe there's an option where we look at a newspaper like that or West News Magazine if we want to put something more in the interim that provides more timely updates on what's going on. So again, let's explore that. Interim city administrator Lee, are you okay with those ideas?
Yes, most definitely. I think that's a great idea. And what the department could do is, first of all, check into the cost of what it would cost to put out an ad that would be able to give our residents an input on the activities and the updates that are coming out. But also looking at potentially the cost of paper that we're using, that glossy finish. I know that other cities, they sometimes use like that newspaper finish. That's a very cheap paper that would probably bring production costs down quite a bit. But that being said, yeah, I'll come back to the committee and present options and see what we find. But I do think that regardless, just with postage too, we will be spending still significantly around, just had this number here. We will be spending for the postage. So one of the ideas I had to, just to run this by you all real quick, was that we could also look to maybe send out additional mailers as well. The city is actually capable of creating our mailers. We do every public hearing we have, we send out a mailer for those the residents that are affected. How we were looking at this and how I was approaching this is we wouldn't necessarily, if we were to have an annual Gazette versus biannual, we wouldn't just, say, hey, that 25 is going to be saved. That would be used. And what I can do is see what we could, two options here, if that would be okay with the committee. One being just finding ways to cheaper the cost of the Gazette, but also provide alternative items where, if we get the paper down cheaper, how many mailers could we send out to our residents? What could we do with our e-newsletter? Could we do a whole redesign on that based off the price that we have? So, but other than that, I can look into the additional means to lower the cost.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Chair.
then, thank you for that. So we will ask you to do that there and just get a formal motion on the floor just to ask this interim city administrator to come back. Councilmember Farmer?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to come back with a couple different options for the Gazette moving forward.
Councilmember Clark, you're seconding? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. Motion passes. Okay, so we're going to continue to move forward. I did notice here that we have the finance director and also our treasurer here. And I know you're here related to one of the items on the agenda here. So We can adjust the order of the agenda if that makes it better for you and get that item covered right now. So if that's okay, I'll ask for a motion just to cover that item next here. Made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Councilmember Nyan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? That motion passes. So we're going to now cover item 8 under administration, review of the city's investment policy. I'm going to ask our interim city administrator to speak to that and introduce it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Really quickly here, if you look at the attachments that are with this item on the agenda, you will notice that the actual review of the investment policy is listed first. What we're asking here tonight from the committee is if we could potentially review the RFP first and then review the investment policy, if that would be acceptable, Mr. Chair.
I don't see any objection to that. Hopefully none here in the room. So go ahead, we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in that case, I would like to turn it over to our finance officer, Dawn Kaiser here, to give a little background on the RFP that we put together here and also get input from the committee. Thank you.
Dawn Kaiser, Finance Officer. I prepared the RFP for a financial advisor for the request of the City Council in the March City Council meeting. Council Member Brost had expressed that this could be potentially advantageous for the city to have a financial advisor. So I went ahead and prepared the RFP. And should the council or should the committee decide to move forward with that, we could I could go ahead and send the RFP out and come back with recommendations for that should you decide to go down that path. And I'm available for any questions.
Have any questions or follow-up? Councilmember Brost, I see your hand up.
Of course, it's up. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Dawn's saying, and I think we've made some progress, and Dawn's done a wonderful job. But I do feel that proceeding with the RFP and looking at those options for the city is a good path. And I'd also recommend that we look at we pursue the RFP and the selection, if we go that route, the selection of an investment advisor prior to really finalizing our investment policy, because I think we're fine now. I have all the confidence in Dawn, but I do think that if we go down the path of an investment advisor, they're going to bring more knowledge than collectively we have. So that would be my position. I've read the RFP. I think Dawn did a very good job with it. And I think it's a good basis to move forward and look at options for the city. So and just as a side note on the investment policy, I would have some changes to it, but I think it's premature. I think we need to bring in, someone who's much more advanced in investments than I am. So, but that's what I have to say, and I really appreciate this moving up and getting on the agenda. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll maybe just ask some clarification questions. The investment policy provides a definition of what is allowable to be invested by the city, or is that? I understand. I know there's things we can't get into as a municipal government.
That is correct. We actually just mirrored the state's model investment policy pretty much word for word, with the exception of some unique procedures that we would follow for internal controls, but for our city.
An advisor, do you know, with this type of role, do you know what kind of fee they charge for this? Is that based on the assets that would be managed by this person? And do you have a general idea of what would be expected to be costing the city?
I did reach out to neighboring municipalities, and including Chesterfield, Baldwin, Ellisville. None of them have an investment advisor. They all make their investments internally. And I'm told it is because they feel that they could manage it in-house, and that the fees, they didn't want to have the extra fees. So from what I hear, it's like between 0.5% to a full % annually on what we have invested, but I'm not sure on that.
So that would be, how much would that be, the amount that would be invested there?
I did some rough numbers, and on the 25 million, if we invested with that current investment that we did, that would be 225,000 a year. And at 0.5%, it would be half of that. So, but I'm not sure that those are the accurate rates. Those are just estimates that I reached out and got.
I'm trying to think of what value they've got.
That is correct. There are a limited number of investments that we're allowed to invest in if we are to mirror the model investment policy of the state. So the risk is already mitigated by limiting those investments, which is one of the advantages of having an investment advisor.
Governments, I mean, a lot of people have experience with individual, but people usually don't have limitations unless they choose to, based on what risk they choose to accept. So do you know if there's people that are specialized in municipal or city type of?
I did reach out to the investor for the state of Missouri, who actually put the policy together. He gave me a couple of entities that he was aware of. But as I said, I'm having difficulty finding any cities, particularly of our size, that use an advisor. And I know that Commerce Bank, who is our current bank, they do have a division that specializes in that as well. And there are several cities that do that.
Any other questions? Councilmember Clark.
I guess I have a question, and one of my questions is, before we go ahead with this this policy change, is there any way that you can, on the policy, make the changes in red, from the original, the policy that we had, and go to the new one? Because it was real difficult for me to look back and forth and find where all of the changes have been made, and maybe strike through the ones that were deleted. That would be my question.
Okay, I could try to do that. The format of the state had revised its model investment policy since we approved our current policy. So the whole format is different. So it was difficult for me to go through and do that. That's why I listed them the way that I did, so that you could just look at this section. I mean, that was the easiest way that I could find to do it. Otherwise, there are a lot of things that have changed as far as wording and things like that.
Well, if you can't, if it's too much trouble, don't. But I was just
I
thinking.
mean, I'd
it
be
would
glad to do it.
easy
It was
see
very
and-
difficult for me to figure out how to present it where it wouldn't be even more confusing.
And when was the last time we made any changes?
We made the last change in 2018 to our policy.
And at that time, we made changes to it, or we just,
We made several changes,
I didn't go back.
right?
Well, I would, based on, all that information we got, and I would also agree with Larry, and I would move that we do approve the RFP because it does look good, and maybe defer the investment policy until we have got information from an investment advisor. Go that route.
So there's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Jackson. Any questions or comments then on the motion on the floor?
So I did, so once we get the RFP back, are you suggesting that there will be changes to the policy other than who would be responsible, other than myself? Just want clarification on what I need to do next. Just go out for the RFP at this time, and then we'll postpone any action on the investment policy? Okay.
To be.
Yes, that is, but I think that Larry does have his hand up, but it's not showing up.
Councilmember Bros, did you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I would just, I guess, I'm not sure if I heard it right. If Dawn said that like an investment advisor would charge from 50 to 100 basis points, Dawn, is that what you said?
That is the information that I roughly solicited.
Okay,
I
and
do
that's,
have,
go ahead,
I
I'm
do,
sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, Commerce Bank are at our current process where I go out and tell them how much we have to invest. It is 0.1%, and that is at the time of purchase and baked into the cost of whatever the investment we purchase. Whereas an investment advisor is an ongoing fee, which would be annual, from what I understand.
And what is that fee that you understand?
0.1% is what we're currently incurring approximately each time we purchase an investment.
Okay, but as an investment advisor, what do you feel the fee is?
At Commerce Bank, they have a division that I'm told charges 0.23%. And outside of that, I'm giving estimates of half to a full percent.
Okay, those are all higher than what I would be able to get for the city. And in addition to that, when you look at the cost, you also have to look at what is the benefit. And I do feel that, at least while I've been on council, we have not realized the benefit of an advisor, nor have we had the cost. So if you engage a qualified professional, whether it's an attorney, an insurance advisor, an insurance or investment advisor, there should be a benefit to that individual. So, but all those numbers that you just mentioned, I feel, and I know from my experience, that we could yield an investment advisor for less than that cost. And if the advisor does not yield a benefit in excess of that cost, then you change advisors. So, but from like 50 to 100 basis points on a fixed income portfolio is absolutely crazy. So, and even 0.23 is high. So, and we don't have the skill set, nor do we watch the markets in our city. So, so, and then the other thing is I just feel the input, should we go down the path of an RFP and select an advisor, I do believe someone who is an expert in their field will provide a benefit to our investment policy, staying within the state's requirements. I I mean, I read it. There's things I would throw out of our policy now because we're never going to do it. But, but I'm not agreeing the fee wise. I mean, that's much higher than what we would find for an advisor in a fixed income portfolio. I'm not looking at, like an advisor to go out and have a diversified portfolio with stocks, bonds, REITs, all this kind of stuff. This is a very straightforward portfolio. So yeah, 0.23, even as what Commerce quoted, is high, and I just voice that from experience.
Oh, I also did want to mention that both the policy and the RFP were reviewed by the interim city administrator, Treasurer McGowan, and the city attorney. And I was just speculating on those fees, Councilmember Brost. That was information that I just made some calls, and that's what I was told. So
yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And from our previous talks, I mean, Tom Lee, Larry McGowan have both acknowledged they're not experts in investments. And I don't know if John Young is an expert in investments or not. I think he's an expert as an attorney. But Tom is not, and nor is Larry McGowan, nor am I. So that's why we're reaching out. So they are not experts in investments, and that was the same call we were on. So I mean, there's nothing lost by the city reviewing the RFP. There's nothing lost, but I do feel that the cost of it will only be a net improvement in our margin, not a reduction. So I mean, we have, as I've said before, the city went on autopilot with just putting all their money in repos. And I would say at this point, had it not be brought to the attention of the council, we probably still would have been sitting in repos. And we have, we're struggling to increase our revenue. And this is a way we can and very safely do it, totally staying within the state guidelines. I'm not suggesting anything outside of the state guidelines. So I really do appreciate that it's on the agenda. That's why I'm on the call. And I look forward to, seeing, responses to the RFP. Thank you.
Any other comments on that? So there's a motion made. Michelle, you have that motion?
So it was to move the RFP for an investment advisor, full changes to the policy until after advisement.
Okay,
Chair Garitano, I have a question.
sure.
Are there any recommendations on who the RFP, anyone on the committee has any recommendations on who the RFP could be addressed to?
So be a good time if anyone does, or Councilmember Brost, you might have information you can send to Dawn.
Yeah, I've already sent it to Dawn, and I think, Dawn, you mentioned you had a couple names from other municipalities, and then I know Katie Dodwell mentioned someone. I thought it was in a group email. So I believe you have, and I'm assuming Commerce as well. I mean, Commerce is a fine organization, so I think that might be 4 or 5 right there. But I'd be happy to talk with you further on it. But I've only forwarded one, and you can reach out to Katie for the others, and I think you mentioned a couple municipalities.
It was actually the state of Missouri had given me a couple recommendations. I haven't had any success with municipalities and financial advisors, but I do have the 2 that the state recommended.
Okay, that would be good. I mean, I think we have a good state.
All right. So we've got that motion on the floor. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose? Anyone abstain? I will abstain. Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you.
So we're back to our agenda items here. Number 2 under for action under administration. This is the objectives for the legislative consultant. And our interim city administrator, if you're there or perhaps frozen.
Can everyone hear me?
You're coming in a little bit broken up there. And you might want to try shutting off your video. Maybe that'll preserve some of the bandwidth and at least get your voice to come through.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I do apologize for the inconvenience there. So back when I was appointed as the interim city administrator, I had a discussion with council members, but also with department directors as well to kind of look at
We lost you again.
Sure, can you hear me?
Still cut up a little bit there.
1 second, I do apologize. Can everyone hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, I do apologize. The main thing here is what I was trying to discuss was after a discussion with department heads, directors of the I've been able to identify a couple different items from sending out a survey to our council members and the mayor. We received 8 responses from the council outlining what objectives our legislative consultant should be focusing on for the 2024 legislative session for the Missouri State Legislature. In this case, why we bring this up is we have kind of an anecdotal evidence of how if we attach particular and specific SMART goals towards the items we provide to our legislative consultant, we can actually see some great improvement. That one item here would be the current funding that we're waiting on for watershed erosion. We right now are waiting for a $500,000 budget apportionment from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. The city would provide a 25% match. There were 2 bills that were present, one from the House that would have provided a 50-50 match. So the city would have had to provide $500,000 to match the state. And then the other was at the 75-25% match. Our legislative consultant was able to do his job up there and just show the importance of us needing the watershed erosion funding. And now we're waiting just on the governor's signature for this particular matter. So from there, I thought it was pertinent to send out a survey to receive feedback from our council members on some of the items that are really that we should be focusing on, and hopefully we can get some input from tonight's meeting to identify specific monetary goals to go with them. But from the survey responses, it was evident that some key areas of concern for our community included protecting the pool tax formula as one, addressing erosion, which we're working on currently too, and infrastructure needs in general. So that could include MoDOT, expanding internet access, and pretty much securing the appropriate funding for other various projects and programs within the city. That being said, I would like to open the floor to the committee, if possible, Mr. Chair, to get some input on what particular monetary values we could assign to some of these goals and what timeline we might be looking at, considering we could be receiving the $500,000 from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources this year. Just kind of prioritizing those. So when I have a conversation with our legislative consultant, we can get into the details and set clear and concise goals for them. I am available now for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open it up here, see if anyone has any comments on this. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I just have a question about, you were talking about the success of the erosion and where we're at with that. Is there any way, city administrator, that we could have a scorecard for the the legislative consultant so that we can see how well we're doing over the year. So we can look at it and see, here are the issues that we're coming up with this year, the ones that you just mentioned. And at the end of the year, we can see where we are, how many of them we have actually progressed on, and just to measure our success compared to our cost for this.
Certainly. Yes, that could certainly be done. And, I could work also, the department could work with our legislative consultant to come up with with that scorecard and set some, and one item, just speaking with our legislative consultant, is the pool tax seems to be something that always gets brought up. There might be some that may need further discussion down the road, maybe during next month's meeting. We do have till January for the legislative session to get started, but I want to get on this as soon as possible. If we were able to put together a scorecard, we could bring that back to the committee and then have that pass. But I think that the goals that were listed are definitely, I am the department's in support of them. So if the department would be okay, if the committee would be okay with this, would be more than happy to get that together for you. And that's honestly what was requesting a motion for today, would be to put together that scorecard. And hopefully we could discuss some monetary on some of the items that would require actual funds from the state. Assign some monetary to the pieces, considering the fact that right now with MoDOT, they have their current steps out till 2026. And there are quite a few projects with the overlay of 109 and 100. But when it comes to watershed erosion, I do think the city could use additional funding there. High-speed internet access, I think that's a lot of these. So I just wanted to kind of maybe break down the goals that were provided and potentially attach either monetary or a timeline to them on where we want to be in June of 2024, if that makes sense.
I don't see any hands up, but maybe I'll just add a comment here. I think it would be good to have the legislative consultant either come to a meeting or join us by Zoom, but I would love to hear the legislative consultant's opinion on some of these items here, because I think there are those that there'll be items that he can directly influence. There may be items that he will say that may not come up in Jefferson City. And so we probably may not want to focus on some of those items. So I think which ones are the ones where we really can have a measurable effect. And I think too, the thing is that there are items in Jefferson City that come up that we want, but then there are items that we will want to make sure never get passed. That could be bad for the city. So that's a win as well. Sometimes, something failing. That would hurt us. So I think that would be good input for us to hear from the legislative consultant now that we've put together our list.
Chair Garitano, I completely agree with you there. And the department could reach out to Mr. Silverman, our current legislative consultant, and see if he would be available to attend the meeting in July, if that would be acceptable. And if not, obviously we'd get him on the next meeting. But I do believe we had already discussed this, and he said he'd be willing, obviously, to talk to the committee. I think that would be a good motion to have that input and potentially, put together this list and compare his thoughts to it.
Hey, Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, if we need it, I'll go ahead and make the motion to do all of those.
All right, Councilmember Farmer has made the motion there. And is there a second? Councilmember Clark. Michelle, do you have that motion there?
Would it be like put together a list of established goals?
Yeah, so we put together a list of established goals, the ones that Thomas presented in the agenda work as kind of a good base, and develop a scorecard moving forward so we can see how successful we are at some things, and then get Mr. Silverman's input on, I guess, on our list to make sure that those are things that, can be impacted in Jeff City. And, if there are things that we don't know about, coming back to us with that.
Councilmember Clark, you good with that motion there? Okay. Any other questions or comments on that motion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstain? The motion passes. Thank you for that. Moving on, next, we have the number 3, the review of the elevator repair RFP submissions. And I'll hand it over to our interim city administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do apologize for the lengthiness of today's agenda. We got a lot on the docket, but for this, back in February, on February 1st, 2023, the city experienced 2 large power outage caused by Ameren, the utility company providing power to the city hall. And during that time, our elevator went out of service. We promptly reached out to our current service maintenance vendor, TK Elevator, to come out and review the elevator and see what was wrong with it. It took some time to get the proper parts from Schindler, who created the elevator, to test it and be able to talk to the internal components to see what was actually wrong with it. Once they identified the actual issue of being a controller drive malfunction, and the controller drive actually being completely having reprehensive damage from the actual power outage itself, they would need to replace it in order to get the elevator back up and running. That being said, we quickly sought a proposal from TK Elevator because it was not part of our service agreement, just to keep the item running and kind of lube up the wires and make sure that it's operating, at a good capacity when there's no serious issues. But they quoted the city at $63,000, a little bit over $63,000. That being said, obviously that exceeded the purchasing powers of the city administrator. So the department did have to reach out, do an RFP. We did publish that back on May 15th. It was put together on May 12th and sent out to multiple vendors, including Schindler. TK Elevator was included in that list, and a lot of other vendors as well. Unfortunately, after speaking with Schindler, we used to work with them. They were not interested in submitting a proposal for this particular fix. That being said, the department did receive one proposal from TK Elevator, so through the official channel of the RFP. And in this case, they actually had lowered the price to $53,000, a little bit over $53,000. The one item I did want to point out here, 2 items actually, is one that we actually reached out to our insurance carrier and stated that this was caused by a power outage, which was confirmed by TK Elevator. And they're currently in the process of reviewing and potentially approving that as a claim. And if it was approved, the city would actually only have to pay a $5,000 deductible, depending on whatever if we were to move forward with TK at that $53,000. In this case, regardless of the deductible or not, I do think it is pertinent that we move forward with fixing it, just because of the ADA concerns, and then also just being in compliance as a city here at City Hall. We want to be sure that we are following the codes that we enforce. So I just wanted to make sure that, we have the ability to move forward. And if tonight I'm asking for requesting a motion to move forward with TK's proposal and to go ahead and make a recommendation to the council, and that'll be presented on June 12th if approved. I am available now for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving this forward. I mean, we got to get the elevator going, but didn't something else blow up from that power too? Like the phones or computers, something blew up, right?
Yes,
Was it just
we
the
actually, the elevator was one of the items, but it wasn't a major issue. We actually had our internet went down for just a small while. I think the servers kind of got a little overloaded with getting the immediate unplug, if you will. And then we had an issue with the phone box back there too. So those 2 items did happen, but they were quickly fixed. But the elevator was the one that remained a consistent issue.
I'm fine making the motion to move forward to get it fixed, and hopefully insurance comes through. Either way, we need to have an elevator.
Is there a second on the motion? About Councilmember Nye. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Right. Then we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the review of the phone system RFP submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for that. So going back to the phone system just mentioned, it was around February, actually going into March, we actually had a CPU failure. That was that what that is it's the port that allows our current vendor, IT Voice, to communicate with our phone system. So if they want to set up an outgoing voicemail for for the holidays, if they want to add someone to the system, if they want to purge an email, not purge an email, to integrate a voicemail into an email, that all that stuff is done remotely and can be done on site as well. But the chip that they had to replace when they came out, they had to replace when they came out, actually held the licensing that we currently have for our council members and also our staff to get voicemail to email functionality. So what that means is someone calls in on your extension here at City Hall. Usually it would be recorded as a voicemail. They would leave the voicemail, and then you get an email notification stating that you have a voicemail, and you'd be able to listen to it by clicking on the voicemail attachment. From there, we were unable to have that replaced because this system was built back. It actually became a legacy system, which means it no longer is getting updates and no longer having parts built for it back in about 2015. We do pay about $700 a month to IT Voice right now just to maintain it and keep it moving. On top of that, we also pay Windstream, our current, I call it our phone dial provider, the actual outgoing phone service, $1,063 per month for the actual phones to be able to call people. This results into a total of $1,763.12 per month. In this case, without having the voicemail to email component, the city decided to start just inquiring with our current vendor about what it would cost to do an installation and a changeover. And we noticed that, yes, it would cost a significant amount based off the actual service agreement. Currently, the IT Voices proposal is asking for a 5-year commitment, but they would provide a free installation and free equipment. That being said, too, we would have to actually buy a new switch, which is the item that would power the actual phone system itself, which would come in at $1,433.71. That being said, we would be able to discontinue that service from Windstream, so it'd all be under one roof with whatever vendor we would choose. Based off the fact that it was a 5-year agreement, it did exceed the purchasing power of the city administrator. So we did go out to bid to get proposals, and we received 9 proposals total. After reviewing the proposals through and through, the department is recommending tonight to move forward with IT Voices proposal based off their understanding of the city's current phone system, our current IT system, and what we're really looking for here. Also, the free installation and the free equipment with the free training all kind of add in to create a competitive proposal at this level. That being said as well, they've already spoken with based off our just a relationship with them, they've spoken with our IT team on multiple occasions. And after speaking with our IT team, actually, everyone's kind of in a comfortable spot if they were to be chosen to move forward. That being said, we did get some other proposals from some pretty competitive vendors, but I did get a little bit, the department got a little bit nervous on some of them just because, the Secure Data Technologies, the setup cost was $32,000, and that was if you took out the yearly costs associated with it. There were some that came in at a cheaper rate, but some didn't have actual physical locations that, they would be able to say, hey, our office is here. So there were some that just didn't provide exact information and didn't provide everything you needed to really fill out the actual RFP. I did want to mention one item, and this was discussed a little bit earlier today, but with the phone system that would be adopted by IT Voices proposal, it is a Neolink phone. The actual product is a phone that has components that are made in China. That being said, the items itself, the servers that the cloud-based phone system would be on, they would all be located within the United States, specifically within Texas. They have some in Connecticut as well, I believe. And also on top of that, they would handle the IT security side of our phone system. It would be separate from our IT infrastructure itself. So our phone system could be looked at as a separate item to our IT infrastructure provided by ThrottleNet. After you take into account the cost savings that we would have by being able to cancel Windstream and then also cancel the current service agreement we have for our legacy system. That would result in monthly savings of around $757.93. That would take a second to recuperate just based off the fact that we would have to buy the new switch. So it would take about 2 months to start making the money back on that deal, but it would in the long run save the money a pretty substantial amount of money on a monthly basis by switching over. And also it would provide us with about 6 additional phones for us to use on whatever means necessary, putting it in, an additional phone in the council room or having an additional voicemail set up for commission chairs, things along those lines. We could really look into those options. But tonight, the department's requesting a motion to move forward with this proposal. That being said, if approved, it will be proposed to the city council on the June 12th meeting, and the department is available for any questions at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Councilmember Farmer or Councilmember Clark, I saw your hands go up at the same time. Questions or motion? Councilmember Clark, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's more of a comment. I still have some reservations with this company just because of the Chinese parts that are in the phones, that the phones are owned by a company in China that is a security risk. And even though servers are US, still have a concern with having the phones that could have a potential risk. So unless we could get this in writing that none of the components used in their equipment are from companies that have been deemed security risk by the federal government, then I would not be able to support this. As soon as we got written statement that said that they are not, then I would be in support of this.
All right, interim city administrator, do you have any response to that? Are you able to
Yes.
check with them on that?
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Clark. I do appreciate that. And I definitely can check with IT Voice on that specific concern. I wanted to look at this email that was sent not too long ago from IT Voice regarding this issue. Yes, but at this time, we do not have a written confirmation that there is no Chinese part from one of the banned lists. That being said, we can definitely inquire and get that.
So perhaps is it a motion conditioned on that letter there,
Yeah.
or like?
In this case, yes. In this case, Chair Garitano, if the department today is requesting a motion to approve IT Voice's proposal and move forward with the condition that we are provided a letter that states that there would be no banned Chinese companies phone parts within the system, the Yealink phone system that they would be providing.
Would that suffice?
That would suffice, but we have to remember that Yealink is owned by one of the Chinese companies.
Councilmember Jaxie.
This used to be my line of work, so I'm curious about, I mean, usually when we talk about security issues, we talk about what's the threat to a specific, system or individual, or do you have a security concern about our communications? Is this beyond, I guess, maybe let me start with a question to Thomas. Does this system go beyond control of our voicemail?
Thank you, Councilmember Jaxie. In this case, it would also, so the phones that we currently have, so the phone that is in my office, the phone that's at the front desk, they would be replaced, and we would not have the old box that's currently in our server room. That being said, there is a strict firewall between our current, the aspects that control our computers control pretty much all the internet that we have in the city and the actual phone system itself. There would not be any intermingling between the two. So when it comes to our actual IT infrastructure, it would just be the phone system that would have this component with the Yealink phones. But in the voicemail component, it would have to be changed over to get that done, just because there's no new chip to replace the old chip that was damaged to have that licensing.
So I certainly appreciate the question, and my only thought on that is, if the system is only interacts with our voicemail, basically, even in a worst case scenario, we lose access to our voicemail. I don't, if that were the only threat, then, that I don't know that would, for me, be a showstopper, right? It doesn't pose I don't know that level of risk is worth us not moving forward unless there's another option out there. Are there other providers or equipment out there? Have you done any research into that, Thomas?
Yeah, so from the proposals that were received, most did also provide phone systems. I can double check that too, but from what I read from there was 9 proposals that were submitted. Most, I pretty sure the majority of them from the research I did were also had some kind of component that could be linked back to a Chinese company, at least one part or another.
That said, I would love to find a U.S. provider. I think we're going to struggle to find a U.S. provider.
Yes, in this case, with the proposals received, it just the actual, and this is more the physical phones itself. The physical phones itself, it seemed that whether it be a chip, whether it be just a dial pads itself, there was something that would come in that would definitely come from China.
Member Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I still see it as we have companies that are banned. And if they are banned by the federal government, we should be held to that same ban.
I guess my question is, what are they banned from? Are they banned from providing any equipment or any support? Or is it only from specific IT, like like Cisco systems, where our entire internet is riding over our router, et cetera, as opposed to a phone system that might be separate? I don't know. I'm not saying that I do. I'm just wondering if the ban that you're speaking about is of specifically telecommunication.
It is a communication. I think Thomas has gone through and researched this or recently more than I have, but it was banning communication systems. And some of the companies that were involved were completely banned. But this company, the Yealink, is owned by another company. And so it's not that Yealink that's listed on the list of banned companies. It's the one that owns them, their parent company, which is one way that introduced to the country. It's just a concern of mine.
It's valid.
I wonder maybe to help with this situation, because I wouldn't consider myself, nor I don't think we have the capacity in City Hall to do the intelligence work of foreign countries. But I think maybe there must be some list issued by the government that specializes in reviewing companies and identifying banned providers. My hope would be is that they would be stopped by customs before they even come into the country, but I don't know how that works. Again, that's beyond my scope. So maybe that's something that we can research, or Thomas can look into to see, is there a list of companies that have certain parts that are either banned or not approved for use? Because I do think it's just, I don't know that I would be able to tell that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can definitely look into that a little bit further and also reach out. I think what might be helpful here too, after doing some research today on this matter specifically, there are within the Department of Homeland Security, there's a department that specifically covers governmental agencies, how they move to a cloud, how they utilize cloud and how they set up cloud-based softwares and how to do it right. Potentially having a call with that individual, and this kind of stems to other items, but maybe potentially learning more. I do think that, this Councilmember Clark's concern here is valid. And I think that at the end of the day, researching these issues and figuring out almost maybe a policy, with the city of how we don't want to onboard potentially, let's say, corrupted equipment from Chinese companies or corrupted services from potential Chinese companies that are banned from and these are usually banned from executive orders that have been given out, some by Biden, President Biden, some by President Trump back when he was president. So there's been multiple companies that have been banned on this watch. So I could reach out to the Department of Homeland Security. There are a couple agencies there that specialize in this work, and especially when you're in the federal government, say we're working on we're in the Pentagon and we're trying to do a new phone system. They hold a pretty high standard of what can be in there. So I think they could give us some guidance on if this phone system would be approved based off of just their experience. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so with that then, Thomas, do you have a timeline or time limit as far as getting back to these get back to them? Or is it open-ended, the RFP?
The RFPs are based off, we could get another solicited bid, but I believe that typically these are 30-day, good for 30 days, just based off when the RFP was stated. It was put out there that if decided, we'd probably move forward and would have something kind of going forward by June 15th was the date that was stated of something would be decided, whether not to go forward at all or to go forward with someone. But that being said, I could reach out to the providers and see if that would be something that would be okay to have this price locked in until we have further information.
I think the issue is that if we don't make a decision tonight, then our next meeting would not be till early July. And then do you have enough time to get it through council to get it approved, right? Because you're over the amount that you're authorized to spend.
Yes, in this case, I am over the amount that I'm authorized to spend. So in this case, this is playing hypotheticals here, but if it were approved tonight, I had planned to draft the resolution to be presented to council on June 12th. To then, if approved by council, could be then pushed forward and obviously executed. At that point, I do believe that I could, in this case, hopefully get the information by the Monday meeting if it was approved. But like I said, that's hypothetical. That's up to the committee. If not, if we go to July, that would be fine too. I could get it on the July council agenda if approved at that time, if everything checks out.
That or the committee could approve it, and then you should have that information by the time it gets to council that, if there is a concern, I think the rest of the council members who are not part of this committee would agree to hold off. But if everything comes back clean, we just keep moving forward.
That could definitely be correct. That's correct, sir.
Okay. I think just for the sake of keeping it moving forward and given that, the time may run out with the RFP, I'd say let's do that. So do we have a motion on the floor yet, or no? I think we started with a question. So Councilmember Farmer, are you going to make a motion? Is there a second? No, just a second. Councilmember Nine. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
You know what the motion is?
Oh, Michelle, you good with the motion there?
Yeah, I have to move forward with IT Voice's bid for the city's phone system with the condition that there are no banned Chinese.
That is correct.
Michelle.
With the condition to get as much information as we can on the parts. We're going to be pretty hard pressed.
Yes, and also just please state that it's a proposal, not a bid, just because there's the distinction is it carries weight if it's a bid versus a proposal.
And is that okay? They just keep it generic, no banned parts, because there might be other items on the list, and then we're boxing ourselves in if it's one specific location.
Yeah, And Mr. Chair, do you mind? What I was thinking potentially here, what we could do, I will make that call to the Department of Homeland Security and just run that by them and see if we can get further information. I could even send them the parts of the phones that are being, because the phone here is really the issue because the servers are all US based. We're going to just need to clear those phones. The other piece here, we can go ahead and reach out to FedRAMP as well. FedRAMP is the organization that deals with, you have to have a FedRAMP authorization to pretty much run a cloud system for a phone system or IT, whatever it might be, within the federal government. I could reach out to them as well, see if they could provide additional input on this phone system, the actual hardware itself. And then thirdly, I will reach back out with with our current vendor. I did receive an email that I will forward to the committee after this meeting, and let everyone know what was said, because I did bring up some of these concerns earlier today, and we can go from there. I think information from the vendor, information from the Department of Homeland Security, and then information from that FedRAMP program could all make us feel a little bit more comfortable moving forward, as long as everything checks out. And if not, obviously we can go back to the drawing board and make sure we find the right pieces so we're not putting ourselves at a security risk.
Thank you. Michelle,
Thank you,
what's the
Mr.
motion?
So are we collecting information then?
No, what you said before was accurate. I think we just were adjusting it to keep it generic of,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, do you mind?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle, it would be to move forward with IT Voice's proposal dependent on if the hardware within their proposal is not banned by the federal government.
That sounds good. A maker and a second, are you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. We're moving on next to the item on the agenda, the hiring of a resident service representative. Again, back to our interim city administrator.
Thank you. Quite popular tonight, Chair Garitano. Thank you all. I just wanted to elaborate here on what this position would be and this particulars. So this committee has been working on a couple different items, but specifically the department has assessed the needs of our residents and just the call volume that's already been ramping up, and the call volume that's already been persistent with the Spectrum Internet project and the upcoming transition with waste haulers. We are changing to a different waste hauler and we're splitting the city. It creates a pretty unique situation. We have never split the city before for waste hauling, and Spectrum plans on ramping up their construction, obviously even more so than they already were over the next couple months. And what we have noticed as a team, speaking with the director of public works, our assistant director of planning, Melanie Ripito, who is handling quite a few of the resident inquiries about Spectrum, and then just handle anyone that would be answering questions amongst these matters. And our front desk receptionist, Ruth, they are all saying that, the number of inquiries that we're getting, especially on the internet project side and now with trash, we're getting quite a few, and it is taking a substantial amount of time from all of our days. And in that case, we're hoping that the committee could recommend what the city is, the department is what the department is requesting tonight is a recommendation to hire a part-time, no more than 20 to 25 hours per week, customer service, but there would be a resident service representative that's job would solely be to answer questions on the phone for either internet or trash. And if, and those hours would be dependent on how many inquiries we're having. And the contract would run specifically from sometime in July. We would hope to have this person onboarded with the change coming August 1st for trash, and then have that contract end on December 31st to make sure it stays below the 6-month contract limit. So we wouldn't have to worry about benefits or anything, not benefits, but unemployment or anything like that after letting that contract expire. This individual, based off the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, that states that the typical customer service rep in America is making about $17.75. That was back in 2021. After doing a little bit more research, it seemed to get somebody that was qualified to be able to speak on behalf of the city. That's the main thing here, is we've got to make sure this individual, we trust them to be the face of the city with our residents on these really really touchy topics would be anywhere between $18 to $23 based off the experience and the qualifications of the individual. In this case, if approved, the department will immediately send out a job posting that was also attached. I put a draft out there if you would like to review. And from there, we would start doing interviews immediately to onboard this individual as quickly as possible, so we can get ready for the transition with the waste, with that vote coming up, and then also with the internet project ramping up. Just two pretty large projects. This is not a permanent position. This is not something we would like to keep on forever. But just with the unique particular circumstances that we have currently, we just want to make sure that we have the manpower here at City Hall to maintain the service level that we have currently with our residents, but also address this sensitive topic on both internet and waste services. I am now available for any questions, and thank you.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have a person that can feel these things. I guess my primary concerns are, I don't know, how are we going to gauge when these people are supposed to be working? Because my guess is that these calls are going to come in whenever there might be an issue, which would seemingly be every day at any time that City Hall is open. So I'm curious if, I mean, I don't know if we want to call it a part-time position or just a contract position. I mean, I think you want to have a person who's pretty adept at communicating and talking to people, because I've never fielded any of these calls, but I imagine some of them are not really excited to be calling. So, you know, having a person that knows what they're doing for a fixed period of time here to answer them, or however we're fielding that, would probably be good. I mean, have we thought through when this person is supposed to be working?
Yes, Councilmember Farmer. And Chair, may I speak to this?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. So yes, we have, and I've spoken with our HR manager, Carla Patrick, about this as well. And we've had experience with this in the past. I've spoken with Mr. Vunich about this as well. We did this when we switched over trash haulers. This was a long time ago. I think we brought on Meridian quite a while ago. We had an individual that would answer calls for the switch, and it worked pretty well. What we would do is we could either have two options here. With the 20 to 25 hours, we would just have this individual come in. I would hope to have them come in Tuesday through Thursday, and then broadcast that on our website stating, if you have questions regarding your internet, or you have questions regarding any other with the trash as well, please call Tuesday through Thursday from those hours that we could place, depending on call volume. And then obviously during those days, so the Friday, for the Monday, for the weekend, if there's an emergency, they could reach out to the dedicated point of contact, which would be myself, and Assistant Director of Planning, Melanie Ripito, for the Internet Project, and then myself and Rick Brown for the trash hauling situation. But in this case, it would be something just to kind of lighten the load during the bulk of the work week. And if we need to, we could also set it up where the individual could come in 5 days a week. In that case, they would just come in and work 5 hours per day. And that individual would come in maybe at 9 a.m. in the morning and just leave 5 hours after that. So they stay below that threshold. So they're still part-time. This could also be a contract position as well. We're just trying to look at ways to, expedite the process, and hiring someone part-time on a contract basis would be a little bit quicker than going out and finding like a external IT, not external customer service provider, just because we're hoping to find someone that has some experience, obviously, in the customer service realm, but hopefully we'd have someone that also has interest in, public service and governmental relations. And also and the thing is, in these interviews with these individuals that I would be conducting, the Director of Public Works would be conducting, our HR manager, and our Assistant Director of Planning and our Director of Planning, we would conduct these interviews. We would ensure that this individual would know that this is a customer service role. They would be answering phones from the minute they step in and answering emails to the minute they step out. This really is just to lighten the load for the other individuals that are currently fielding these calls, so we can spend more time on the projects that are currently on our plate. Does that help clarify there, Councilmember Farmer?
I guess that's one way to describe it. So is this person going to come and sit at the front desk and answer all the calls? How are they going to get?
Oh,
how do we?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
So this individual would actually sit. We have an active phone and an extra computer, and this individual could sit at my previous desk for the time being. We also have another spot open on the Department of Planning side. So either way, they wouldn't sit at the front desk. This would be a person that we would have a direct line on the website, or it would be forwarded over to Ruth, and they would forward that directly over to the individual that's in the office, and we'd make sure that their voicemail is set up to then catch up on anything they maybe missed on the Monday. I also have been pretty much in favor of having the potentially Monday through Friday for 5 hours a day. Does that help?
Oh,
Councilman?
yeah. I mean, look, I'm all for getting you guys the help that you need. I'm certainly not opposed to that at all. I just think that, and you know, you can take the suggestion or not. I'm in support of you guys getting the people you need to help. But I think that in this specific kind of a situation, you could probably find a person that doesn't ever need to be in City Hall. They can answer these calls remotely if they're being transferred. They can respond to emails. That can all be monitored to make sure it's going well. I think you'll get a much higher caliber communicating individual if you do that, rather than assigning a person to sit at a desk for 5 hours a day and maybe the phone rings and maybe it doesn't. And it just seems a little weird to me, but that might just be me.
Councilmember Farmer, I would love to take that into advisement, and I would, I think that's a great idea. Especially the remote aspect of it. Customer service reps have tended to kind of shift to the remote realm. Based off my understanding of how we've typically been doing it with our employees, we typically have them on site on every day. So and it was just a little bit away from the norm for me, but I would be more than happy if the committee tonight were to make a motion to move forward with that condition, to carry through and take that into advisement and have that be the main piece of this, because that's the key, to have them be able to answer that call at any time. That might actually be more effective, and just say, have a contract that not exceed X amount, instead of having it be, you're paid this amount each day, you know, whatever it might be. I think that might be a better way to go about this.
I think if you're paying people to answer the phone and emails, that's pretty easy to figure out. We can see how many we're transferring. You can see emails. So if they're answering them, awesome. If they're not, great. If they don't get calls, we don't have to pay them. If they do, we do. I mean, we want to get the answers to these people as quickly as we can. So I'm happy to make that motion. If that's the way you guys want to do it, that works for me.
The department also, department approves of that too. That's actually a great, thank you, Councilmember Farmer, for that suggestion.
Okay, so continue to have some discussion. Councilmember Clark, is that more along the lines of a motion or clarification question? Okay, question, go ahead.
Question is, how do these people know the answer to these questions? Are we going to give them some training first? Are we going to have something for them to read? Because there's a lot more than just answering, yes, you're on the map or not. There's a lot of questions that are coming through I get that you have to be very sensitive with the information that you give. So not that I'm trying to keep anything from people, but just to make sure that they are answered in a way that that satisfies them. So if I don't have all of the information, I can readily find it. But a person that's just brand new here, I don't know how they know what to answer.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Sure, please go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Farmer. Sorry about that. So in this case, this person would receive training, and that's why at first I had suggested that we should have them come in for the 20 to 25 hours per week at City Hall. During that month, I would like, the department would like to have this individual hired by the 1st of, the 15th of July. And we'd like to spend that first 2 weeks training them on I personally am the one answering many of the internet inquiries, along with the assistant director of planning. We would train them on the software that we have, the master list that we have provided, but also we would train them on the contacts necessary at Spectrum for them to reach out to them, and then stay on top of those individuals to make sure that the resident had actually received a call from Spectrum, or a call from from one of the trash hauler vendors. Either or, the individual would then be trained by myself and the director of public works on the trash hauler situation. Exactly what happened. They would have talking points. They would have everything they would need after the training to be able to go work remotely or work within the office. But we would give them adequate training, and we would not just throw them to the wolves. We would make sure that they understood their role, and I would actually monitor myself the first routine, maybe 100 inquiries before we would let them kind of go out on the loose. So they wouldn't feel that they don't have that support. They would always have my number. That's another reason why having them at City Hall was important for me, was just because that my office was just a door away. And the thing here is if it's a serious matter, the goal is to have them escalate it at that point to myself, the assistant director of planning, or the director of public works. But what we're trying to do is filter out those concerns that aren't necessarily too high level, but takes quite a bit of time to get to all of them, and just be able to kind of have that first level of customer service and then escalate it up if needed. And that would always be an option as well, especially if it's a subject that needs to have the city administrator or the director of public works or the assistant director of planning's attention. Thank you.
I just, following up to that, who would you mentioned that all of these people, you, the director, different people would be open to them, but who would they report to? Who would be the one that is supervising them? And just to mention to that, if I may, that on your job posting, it looks like there's a lot of hours there. 20,000, 25 hours.
Oh goodness, I do apologize. That is a draft, and that was a typo. I do apologize for that. In this case, they would be directly reporting to the interim city administrator, as in myself.
Okay, good questions. Any other questions here? All right, is there a motion to move forward with this recommendation here? Made by Councilmember Farmer. That a motion? Okay, is there a second? Made by Councilmember Jaxi. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to move forward with the recommendation for the resident service representative, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is number 6, repairs to Wildwood Municipal Building. And back to the interim city administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this case, the city and the department, our building manager makes routine checks around City Hall to make sure everything looks good. And we did notice a conglomeration of dust on some of our ductwork within City Hall. In this case, we just wanted to make sure everything was good, just to take proactive steps. We had American Environmental Laboratories come out and just test the air quality, make sure that dust had nothing to do, no bad qualities in it. We got a report back, and it did state that we're completely clean. We're okay for occupancy. No problem with the air quality. That being said, they did just provide some recommendations on how we could clean the HVAC system and how we could pretty much take care of that dust that it was building up on the corners. It was supposedly caused by condensation moving in and having the difference in temperatures. So this would just be approval to look into the possibility of having a vendor come in and complete the work outlined in the report, just performing the cleaning and remediation of that duct work, and just cleaning out the actual ducts itself. And then having regular cleanings throughout, so if we start noticing that dust to come back. But at the end of the day, this individual would also be able to identify if this dust was going to just be something consistent. But after speaking with American Environmental Labs, they said that this should handle it, and this should take care of it. The department's here for any questions, and if approved, we'll go ahead and start looking towards vendors. And at the July meeting, we can then present options to the committee for review.
Questions, comments, or motion on the floor of this? Councilmember Jaxi. Okay, Councilmember Jaxi is making the motion to move forward with this recommendation to explore hiring a vendor to carry out these tasks. Second by Councilmember Farmer. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Motion passes. Okay, so we do have item number 7 here, but just looking at the agenda here, maybe a thought would be is we just hold that one to the very end, because that will be an update since it is related to the posting and hiring. It is a closed session item, so if that's okay, then we'll just make a motion to again move this to the very end of the agenda there, after the discussion on the proposal from Precision Concrete for sidewalk repairs, which is the last item that we'll have to cover. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi, to again rearrange the order of the motion and move this towards the end. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the motion passes. All right, so we covered that. So now we covered the next item already, number 8. We're going to move into Public Works. The first item for information is 1, the update on the waste hauler agreements. Is that going to be Director Brown?
Well, it can be. I was kind of expecting Thomas to handle this one. Thomas, what is your preference?
In this case, I would be more than happy to handle it, and you can add in any notes or vice versa. What would you like to do, Mr. Brown?
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay. Well, this is a quick update for the trash hauler agreement. Just wanted to let everyone know here we are moving swiftly, and we are very confident that we will have agreements ready for council review at the city council meeting on June 12th. Today, the Department of Public Works and the Department of Administration met with Republic Services to iron out a couple of the last details within the agreement, and it seems like we're in a good place right now. On top of that, we have spoken with Gateway Disposal, our second hauler that would take on the rural areas, and it seems like we're in a really good spot there as well. The contract that the agreement we had sent over does seem pretty acceptable on their end with very minor adjustments. So I do believe at this point we'll have 2 agreements presented ready to go for final, for consideration at the council meeting on June 12th. If you have any questions, the Director of Public Works, Rick Brown, and myself are available at this time, and more than happy. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Director Brown?
I just wanted to add, thank you, Chair. Monday night, when we do bring those to the city council, we will need to ask for 2 readings that evening. So just please keep that in mind and support that request, if you don't mind.
That is, the Department of Administration also would highly recommend that based off that memorandum of understanding that was approved during last month's city council meeting.
Questions or comments? All right, moving on then for action. First item is deer management, quote from White Buffalo. Director Brown.
Thank you. I'll be glad to give Thomas a break. First item, deer management has been in front of you. This is a continuation of the long-standing item. So tonight, I'm essentially bringing you a renewed proposal from White Buffalo to start the effort to reduce the deer population within the city of Wildwood. So we talked about this last year and had a similar proposal in front of you at that time. Just to remind you, this is based on the counting that was completed in 2020. At that time, that was done by the Wildwood Precinct, and they counted deer in essentially 5 areas of the city. So this proposal is to start in what is called the Northeast 1 area, NE1. It is the highest density of deer population in the city. So that's why we're proposing to start in that area, and that's consistent with last year as well. And that area generally is essentially east of 109 and Shepherd Road, and then more or less, I'm just getting my boundaries messed up here. Sorry about that. It's generally bounded by Route 100 on the south, 109 and Shepherd Road on the west and north, and then Strecker Valley on the north, and then goes to the city limit to the east and the south. So it's a meandering area of the city, more or less, obviously in the northeast. So we do have the proposal for you. It is for the value of just under $216,000. It does include some upfront costs to have them come out to help identify properties in advance of the program itself. So there is an opportunity to split out some of this work in advance if necessary. I wanted to point out that based on our discussions with White Buffalo, they've stated that we may need to get upwards of 40 properties identified to allow hunting under this proposal. So the idea would be we would contact those property owners, have them sign an agreement to protect them in the city, to allow the White Buffalo folks to enter the property. And the thought is they would pre-bait at those sites starting somewhere around January 1. And then they would pre-bait for a couple of weeks, and then they would actually show up, and then they would start the culling process. So it would be work that would start January 1, and more or less they're saying they would like to be done by the end of February. So it's more or less a 2-month process. So a lot of properties that we'd have to identify and work through those agreements in the next coming months. The cost for the program is about more or less $719 a deer. Again, they're identifying the need to cull approximately 300 deer within this area based on the density that was identified with the 2020 deer count. So that's an idea of how many that they need to cull over that 2-month period. So with that, I think I will stop and open it up for any questions. If you all approve this quote, we would be glad to put the legislation together to enable the agreement with White Buffalo and present that to the city council for their consideration and hopeful passage. And with that, I will end unless Thomas wants to add anything further.
At this time, I think you did a great job, Mr. Brown, covering that. I'm also available for any questions. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I don't know if happy is the right word, but I'm ready to make the motion to move this forward. You know, every day I drive around and I just see more and more deer splattered all over the roads, and it's just not great. So I really would like to see this move forward. I'd also like to make sure that whatever the cutoff date is that we missed last time around, that we definitely don't miss that this time around. Let's make sure we get this thing up and running so that we can get this problem underway.
Councilmember Clark, and then Councilmember Nine.
I was just going to second the motion.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Nine, what's the question?
I just have a question, and I don't know if we'll know the answer tonight, but in that we need to find 40 properties, will this be put out to the public in case they're interested in offering their property so that they don't have to, scavenge around to find the properties? And I'm not saying if they volunteered, their property might not be ideal, but maybe that would be faster or easier if it's put out there to the public. Like if you're within this boundary and you have a property, this big, whatever the criteria is, that maybe they would come forward and save time and effort than having to go track them down.
Yeah, I think that would be something that I would see as being desirable. Yes, is that we would reach out. Now, if y'all have any property owners that you're aware of, obviously we'd want to hear from you, because I know Councilmember Edens has already provided a handful of owners, I think last year. I still have that information, but certainly any way we can be informed of these folks, whether it's through you all or putting out a direct request. Basically, the more, what we were told by White Buffalo was the more that the word gets out to the public, these folks will start coming to us saying, hey, I'd love you to come to my property. So we envision that should occur to some degree.
Do we know what the criteria is? Like, does the property have to be a certain size?
Well, I think the thought would be that it would be a 3-acre tract or larger piece of property to comply with our current ordinance, frankly. So that would be my thought regarding that. I do have, I think as you're aware, I didn't have him attend or join via Zoom, but Brad Wendling is going to help us in that process of working through those contacts with the property owners, going on site and checking the properties for suitability, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Councilmember Jackson.
Follow-up question, Rick, do the properties have to be 3 acres in this case? If we're issuing, or if this is a program through the city, is there any limitation placed on them size-wise?
I think that's a legal question. I may want to check with the city attorney on, because I don't know the answer to that, Councilmember. I'm about to check and get back to you.
Okay, yeah, it's just one, I think, maybe Brad, right?
Yeah, Brad Wendling, but essentially what we're saying is a exception would have to be made in the code, and whether that be part of this process of allowing an allowance to make an exception. I'm sure we could do that if it was incorporated in the approval, if that's what we desire to do. It would just have to be, I think, called out in the ordinance somehow.
And we do have the city attorney on. Do you want to ask now, or you want to just wait to get that information later?
I'm okay with Rick working it.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other questions?
Chair.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair Garitano. I just wanted to just make a quick mention too that this was not budgeted for the 2023 fiscal year. So this would have to be done during the mid-year budget adjustment. So just wanted to give that clarity, and most definitely we'll speak to that during the city council meeting too if this moves forward. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, no other hands up. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Michelle, I know I was starting to ask you that before, but you got it down, right?
Yeah, I pretty much used his recommendation from his memo.
Perfect. Okay, moving on then next. Yeah, Councilmember Fawn.
Yeah, I don't know, Tom, if it's you or Rick or somebody, but for sure we will have our friends from the bow hunters show up. So my very strenuous suggestion would be to have some type of appropriate talking point rather than just sitting here and being quiet about it. So I don't know who that would be, but we should come up with
Most
something to
definitely.
say.
No, we can definitely have a talking point, and yes, most definitely can get that done for us. Rick, we can discuss that further tomorrow if possible.
Absolutely, sure.
Great. The next item is the federal funding agreement for Valley Road resurfacing project.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. Next on the agenda is our newer Valley Road resurfacing project. We applied for federal funding for this project last year, and we were approved for that funding. So now we'd like to take the next step, essentially in the process to essentially get the funds from the federal government. We have to enter into a funding agreement with the state of Missouri, with MoDOT, and we have to do this on every federally funded project that we are approved for. So the Valley Road project is about $1 million project. It's what our original estimate has been for. So we put in for 80% federal funding. So we'll be reimbursed for up to $800,000 of our expenses on that project. So the improvement would go from Clayton Road all the way up through to Strecker Road. We'll look at doing some additional improvements on that as well. I know there's a couple sidewalk gaps that would make some sense to fill in with that project. So there could be some additional enhancements included in the resurfacing of the roadway. And we'll also take a look at stormwater drainage issues along that section of road as well. So tonight we are recommending that we move forward with the execution of the federal aid program agreement with MoDOT to secure the $800,000 of federal funding that would go towards the project. I should note that the project is included in the region's transportation improvement program. So they've allotted the funds for the year 2026. So it'll still be a couple of years, 3 years before we can actually build the project. So that is the recommendation tonight. If you approve the recommendation, we'll provide the legislation to the city council for hopeful approval at the next meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over for any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone that'd like to make a motion? Councilmember Farmer and Councilmember Farmer, you making the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Clark, that's a second. All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? That motion passes. Moving on next to the next item on the agenda is the sanitary sewer lateral repair program.
Thank you again, Chair Garitano. As I'm sure you're aware, we have discussed this program in previous meetings. And he brought back tonight a little more information to you on a potential, I guess one thing we need to decide exactly what we're going to call the program. I referred to in my memo as a sewer lateral repair program. It will operate as an insurance program. I think the comment was made last meeting, maybe or when we talked about it, to call it a sewer and septic repair program. So we probably need to wordsmith the actual, what we're going to call it. So just be aware, I'm aware of that going forward. But we did have a follow-up meeting with folks with the St. Louis County Department of Public Works to have an opportunity to ask a few more follow-up questions with regard to the program. Again, this would be essentially an insurance program for residents to alleviate the cost to repair a damaged lateral line for your sewer. Again, it would include, it's envisioned to include not just folks on a public sewer, but folks that have their own septic system or who might be on a private system. So there are folks in the rural areas that have septic systems, and there are some subdivisions that have their own private treatment systems. So we envision that those folks would all be eligible for the program. We did talk with county about the cost and the assessment, and effectively the county would charge an assessment and they would report the money back to us, and then we would redeposit it with the county, essentially if we enter into an agreement with the county for the program. The one thing to keep in mind would be the date that the money would be collected in the program. So if we move this forward and get it approved at a subsequent election, say that be November, what we understood talking to the representatives with St. Louis County is that the funds would not actually be collected from residents until the end of year 2024. So if we want to get the program started sooner, which I'm guessing you probably would want, we need to think through exactly how we fund it in the interim. So in other words, there may be a need to put some seed money in the program so that we could start repairs earlier than that time, if that was the desire of the council. That seed money could be recouped at some point in the future or withdrawn back out of the account if that's the desire of the city, or we could just start the program with some seed money. That we probably need to do a little more discussion and probably make a decision about in more detail, because I think the start of the program is one of the keys here. Again, the assessment would be on your property tax bill collected by St. Louis County. It could be anywhere from $28 to $50 a year. I think we've kicked around the idea of actually a fee or assessment in the range of $33.50 a year, which would, in theory, have enough money to cover repairs accounting for 1% of the properties within the city. We think that would give us a decent amount of money, around $400,000 over 1 year for repairs. And keep in mind, the county will deduct out their fee of 10%, I think it was 10% right now, to account for their costs to administer the program. So we need to make a final determination on the assessment, but we are feeling like it would be wise to put that at about $30.50 a month. And I would point out, and I've said this before, I actually myself have coverage through American Water Company. They have this kind of program that you can purchase a policy through them. Mine is on the order of $9 a month, and it's limited in its scope. So this is going to cover 100% of your repair at a much lower cost than at least what I get personally through American Water. So to me, it's a great deal. It's a no-brainer because I don't get 100% of my costs covered through American Water, and it's a lot more expensive. So The question came up about the participation on the program, and the idea is that it would be a mandatory participation in the program. However, we did kind of push back on that with the reps with St. Louis County, and I think they indicated there might be some flexibility in that. However, I don't know that we'd want to publicly state that. That might be something, if it came up and a subdivision was greatly opposed to the idea and the concept, there might be an option there to address it, but not something we would want to publicly disclose up front necessarily. But generally, it's a mandatory program. If the city approves it, the voters approve it, you would be required to pay it. Under the program, again, the county would administer the program for us. Residents, if they have a claim, they would make the claim to an application directly to St. Louis County. The county would review the request and deem it to be eligible or not for the program. Once it's approved, the county would essentially identify the scope of work. They would get bids from contractors that essentially they've pre-qualified for the work. They would administer the contract, pay the contractor, and they would inspect the work for the resident. So from the department's perspective, it would be, again, I think we've talked about this, it would alleviate us from a lot of details and work that might go into the program if we administered it, quite frankly. So we see it as a really positive thing in that regard. Something that was mentioned at our meeting that they were a little bit concerned about is we need to ensure that our building codes line up with the county. And I think that is the intent, but if it is not currently the situation, they would say, they told us we'd have to make sure or make any ordinance changes to ensure that our building codes are lining up currently with the county. I don't think that would be a concern of the department or the city, but we would have to make that determination. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up at this time. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I did, if you don't mind, Chair. I just wanted to clarify one of the big questions at the last meeting that we discussed. This was regarding the septic versus grinder pumps versus regular sewer. And everyone is eligible, but it only replaces the sewer lateral. So it's not any of the septic field or grinder pump equipment. It only replaces the lateral on a septic tank from the connection to the house to the tank, and then from the tank to the box, which is just a single line, like you would imagine. And then grinder pumps, it covers the lateral line from the point of the grinder pump station to the point where more than one line connects to a main line. So essentially anywhere where it comes a public line, it doesn't cover that. It just covers the line from the point of the house to that connection. So that's all I would say.
Any questions? I do have a question. This covers then all properties. So regardless whether it's commercial or residential, or is it just residential?
I think this is intended for residential properties.
Okay, so just want to understand that better. And then as far as those properties, like with the septic or grinder pump, is that regardless of the distance of wherever the septic tank is located?
I think so. I think they will cover the lateral, and as long as it's an eligible lateral, they'll cover it.
Right. But the break is going to be wherever it's just a small section of the line that they're fixing there.
Yeah, it depends. I think I will say, sorry, but the program administrator, they do a really nice job of making sure that the scopes of work are very tight and that everything, like they pride themselves on administering the program well. So I think it depends on the issue. If it's just a small piece, they may just fix that or replace the whole thing. It depends on what it is, I think.
Well, I think the demand we've gotten about the sewer lateral program continues to come up when I have conversations and people ask, where are we with this? I think this is something that it's worth doing. I do think because it will be a ballot item, certainly I think then the city probably can only provide educational information on it. And we probably should take advantage of doing that because there will probably be some misstated facts, about the program that I think we would need to make sure the right information is getting out there. And so, that's something I think we do need to think of, and, if we do decide, maybe even do card mailing that talks about the program, we need to factor in that that's going to cost us money. So if that's something we need to also factor in, what we should. And then I believe I heard the other question that we have to answer is, do we want to put seed money in there to make the program effective earlier than later? And that's something that I guess we would need to budget. Do you know, Rick or Dan, how much seed money you're thinking of?
Well, in theory, if the assessment is intended to cover a year's worth of repairs, you would need 400 grand roughly over the course of 12 months. So, I mean, you could prorate that, I suppose. If you said you wanted to start the program on June 1st, say, of 2023, if it's on the November ballot, you probably give us a little time to get everything up and running, perhaps, or I don't know what that date would be. April 1st, 9 months, 10 months, and try to prorate that number. But it could be a fair amount of money. Again, if the program's healthy, you could withdraw it back out of the fund over time, or say 10 years or 5 years or whatever is the intent. But you could withdraw it a little bit out every year to try to recoup that money.
I think we need to know that answer, because it's going to be a question that people ask about, and we have to let them know. And so we need to figure out if we're willing to put some seed money in. And then, I would assume that we probably would want to get that reimbursed back to the city if the city's going to put the money down, let the program run on its own. But it's also, it's sort of like lending money to the program in order to get it going sooner. But that will mean that, council is going to have to find where that money's going to come from, or, does it come out of the reserve fund, knowing that it will be reimbursed back into. So, Rick, I think we're going to have to figure this out pretty quickly here, because that's going to be all information that needs to be finalized.
So I didn't mention it, but essentially the deadline for the November election to get it on the ballot is the end of August. So the thought would be, if it's approved by the council by their August meeting, we would be in good position to do that. So we have a little bit of time, but obviously not much.
So you thinking that we'll make a motion for what we have here and still have to continue to work on that piece? I think we have to provide a proposal of how we're going to fund it, the seed money, the amount, and see if the council is okay with whatever funding source we use. Councilmember Clark.
One question that's not really related to what you were asking. This may be a silly question, but because of the situation that was in the last year, year before, with the roadway that was involved in a resident having to do some repairs, is that it? Does this cover, like in a private subdivision, the roadways as well as the public roads?
I would expect that it would, yes.
The one I've been at.
So it means if they have to excavate in the street, whether it's private or public, they would patch that spot up as well. I think that's good information to put out there. So, all right, we just need to figure that part out. Rick, do you think we should move forward with this now and still have to figure out that other part, or do you want to figure out the seat funding piece? Because looking at the dates, and we want to keep moving.
Our general idea is to take it out of the reserve anyways. Can we just do that?
I think that could be part of the motion. I mean, if that's fine. I mean, I know that maybe a question that might come up is that then looked at as an imbalanced budget because we're taking money out of the reserve, or is it because we're borrowing it to fund the program and then the program will reimburse it? Would that change that perspective? Because I think some people might not like the fact if the budget's not balanced. So I wonder how that looks, and how that works.
I mean, it's still balanced if you're, it's just a answer for one project. I would. It's coming back. All right, well then, what if we do, can we do the motion with the idea that we need to have a number for what our initial seed money needs to be? And then that money theoretically comes from the reserve, because the other thing is that we may not even spend that.
That is true too. Money is that money then held within the city? Like, do we have a separate fund in Wildwood? Or is that fund part of the county? I'm thinking it's part of ours.
Well, essentially, they would hold it for us in a separate fund, if I understand it. And I didn't mention, they do provide monthly reporting on the fund and the expenditures that they are incurring. So we'd have that balance to report back to you.
So that's what I'm thinking of. Is I'm not the finance person here, but I'm thinking there'll be a debit of whatever that amount is. To be some kind of reimbursement back into it in the future. Right.
Do we need to include anything as to how the payback or when the payback, like we're going to take X% a year, or we hope that's paid back in 5 years? I guess we can't really know how we would stick to that, but I feel like there should be something, because it's just not going to be, endless. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it $33 a month or a year?
A year. Per year.
So if we accounted for a level of inflation, that would be hard. Instead of 33, it's 40, 45. Then that extra $10 just back until it's back. Because how many houses do we know? How many houses we're talking about?
11,000, almost 12,000.
Almost 12,000, 11,900.
I think if you change the amount, it would have to go back to the vote.
That if you change the amount for what, like
The annual premium.
it would have to go to a vote anyways. It's going to a vote anyways.
Oh, yeah, I meant if you changed it back. Sorry.
Does that increase, like the county program now, does that go up due to inflation, or is that flat?
I think we probably need to check on that and find out exactly how that would work, whether you'd be tied to a rate. I mean, I was originally thinking that you would allow yourselves the ability to increase it as part of the approval, but that would require subsequent action by the council. But we can, because you're allowed to assess up to $50 a year under state laws, I understand it. So I would think there would be some leeway in there where if you write this correctly, that you would have that flexibility in the future to ensure that it was funded. Yeah. Yeah.
City.
Rick, if we want to figure out a couple more details here, I'm looking at the calendar here. And let's say we wait to get all these answers for the July meeting. I think it'd be good to get it as baked out as much as possible. Do we have time then to get it before council for the July meeting and then a second reading in August? What's that date of the deadline for the county to put it in for an election?
It is towards the end of August. So my thought was, if it goes to council, if it is an ordinance and requires 2 readings, it could be July and August. And so, yes, we could report back to you in July and then move it to council at the July meeting. I probably ought to double check that date. I don't know if anybody's got a calendar handy, but
August 3rd.
So the council, or what is our date, our meeting date in July? Does it precede the council meeting?
Third Monday of the month, right, Rick?
Because we have the holiday in there. That's what I think is going to mess us up, isn't it? Yeah, that's correct. So yes, our meeting in July does mess my timing up in that regard because your council meeting is on the 10th. Also,
Yeah, so that wouldn't work. So I think we need to figure that out here. Thanks. Said the timing would not work because our July council meeting.
But I mean, can't we just get the stuff we need by? We're just looking for a number, right?
Well, Rick has already given us that number, basically said it needs about 400,000 for it to be funded. So the question is, can we fund it, let's say hypothetically effective beginning of 2024? Maybe that'd be an opportunity. We'd be able to use the budget, if it's 2024, if we fund it, let's say January 1st, 2024. It's coming out of the 2024 budget, but then you're going to get money in the program in 2024, right?
what we were told was we won't get the funds till the end of 2024.
But if they come in the end of 2024, then the money's coming back in the same year.
Yeah.
So theoretically, we might be okay because then we're laying out money in the beginning of the year, getting reimbursed by the time we close the books at the end of the year.
That's very true, right? Because you're going to get a lump sum payment of X dollars.
Because the county's going to collect it as part of taxes in the 2024 year.
Yeah.
So maybe Rick, then the question asked the county is, in theory, if we put this $400,000 in, and then let's say just $200,000 of that is spent, and they have more money coming in, so there's an extra 200 grand. How can we get that? Yeah, it may all get spent or one of it gets spent.
Because what Rick is saying here is that the county recommends that it have funds available to cover 1% of the connections, which would amount to 120 repairs. And that's roughly about
About 400,000.
Yeah.
They would get permits, yes. The county, yeah, they referenced their records relative to permits that were issued for sewer repairs to kind of come up with some of the numbers. Yeah, yeah.
Rick, how much is this program collecting a year? How many households are we collecting from?
So, I mean, what I was saying, if the assessment was 3,350, you'd be collecting about $400,000 a year or about 33 grand a month. If you want to look at it that way. About 400 grand a year, if I did the math right.
Because it's 3,350 times, and again, we're just rounding it up. I see it's, you got 11,916. So that's $402,000. But the average repair cost is $3,300, and we're anticipating 1%, which is 120 homes, which is just, it's like 390. I think it was like 396. So therefore, barely just breaking even in the program. It's not going to build up money in there.
But can we write it in such a way that says the collection fee, that the amount, as opposed to 30, we have 3,350 is a suggestion, 50 is the max. Can we write it in such a way that says the fee is determined, it will be based upon the payback of the city's initial seed money And in other words, maybe in the first year or two, it starts out at $40, per home per year, and it goes down to 33 once the city's initial seed money is paid back. Is it possible to write it in such a manner?
I think that's a good question. Maybe John might be able to help us with that, because if we do put this on the ballot, does it freeze that amount, or is it something that the council annually can adjust based on the funding needs of the program? And like to your point, we may want to make sure it's fully funded in the beginning.
My recollection is that there's a fixed amount. I would just have to confirm that.
John, I think I heard you started talking. Are you saying it's a fixed amount and therefore what
I'd have
would
to double
require
check. I'd have to double check the statute, but my recollection is there is a fixed maximum, but I would just have to double check that.
John, I think Rick mentioned the fixed maximum. My question is, can we write it in such a way that the first year or two, that while there's a fixed maximum, the suggested amount was far below that at 33. Can we write it in such a manner that the amount is higher in those first year or two to help pay the city back any seed money, and then gets down to whatever the recommended amount is?
Typically in an election like this where you have an amount, you set a maximum and you can charge anything less than the maximum. So the ballot proposition would be an amount not to exceed, and you can vary that amount as needs dictate.
Councilmember Clark.
So is it, yeah, I want to get this as soon as possible for the residents. However, maybe we just say the program, can we say it starts when we get the money? So they vote on it, but the program starts at the end of.
Well, for what it's worth, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did look at the statute just now, and there's specific ballot language that does expressly say shall a maximum charge not to exceed $50. So that's the way the ballot proposition is intended to be worded per the statute.
So therefore, the actual amount will be controlled by the council, the city, but it should just not exceed $50.
Correct.
So go ahead, Councilmember Jackson.
But Councilmember Clark's point, I mean, so I assume your question is, do we need to make a call on how important is it for coverage to start right away versus towards the end of the year when it's funded by the collected dues? I could go either way. Rick, based on what would your recommendation be based on your position and how many of these you're dealing with each year?
Councilmember, I feel like if voters approve it, you're probably going to be pressured to get it going as quickly as possible because folks are going to want to take advantage of it knowing that it's been approved. But I mean, legitimately, you could say the money's not in the bank, but I think you're going to get that pressure.
So I think then, if we were to put this on the ballot and then we determine that the city would put up the money for the program, the 400,000 starting in 2024, the program will have collected that amount of money back by the end of the year. The unknown that we have is whether or not we will use up all of the money or if it will have leftover money in there. And Rick, you're saying that 1% is typically what they expect?
Yes, Councilmember, that is the number they provided us to
So
address the administrative costs.
my question probably is that, feels like that 1%'s cutting it too close. Like there has to be some kind of padding in there because there will be years where the program uses more than 1%, more than 1% of the homes. And there'll be years maybe where there'll be less. So we have to be able to absorb that, or like what Councilmember Jackson was saying, build that up in the beginning because we don't know what kind of year 2024 is going to be. So yeah. I think that's going to be a very tough situation because basically I think the city, as we think through this over here, though, I think that's a very difficult conversation to have because when that system fails, they basically they're probably not gonna be able to live in that home until it gets repaired. And if they're paying for a program and they're being told you have to wait until, I'm thinking that's gonna be difficult, right? They're gonna say, no, I paid for it. You need to do your part of the deal. So it feels almost in a way like we probably would have to fund it even more, like 500 or something like that too. Yeah. Yeah, we're not gonna be.
I mean, so in Chesterfield, they did this in 2000. Adjusted for inflation. I mean, to me, I don't. Balanced budget is like.
It's gonna be a difficult year. Property taxes will probably go up as well. And probably it's not even it. It will. Councilmember Clark.
So I have to apologize, I can't remember. Was this for the whole city is going to be involved, even the ones that aren't going to reap the benefit?
Everyone will. Everyone have the opportunity to have a benefit.
They're only people on set.
Everyone with a sewer connection. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, unless there's a system, a sewage type of system that I'm not aware of.
Unless
I
it's
can see
an
where-
on-site treatment plant, they will not do any treatment lateral.
Got it. So if it's an on-site treatment plant, I think there are some subdivisions that maybe have that. I know there's one off Woods Road. I
Yeah,
believe.
but they would still replace the individual lateral.
So the lateral will still cover. Okay, and that's what it is. Every person who has a lateral in the city, it's treated by a public sewer or a septic system, your lateral will be covered under this program.
Which I have to say, we were kind of surprised by that because
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got this right. Based on what I heard Rick and John say, the legislation is the legislation. What we'd be putting forward to the public would basically say up to a maximum of $50. So I think the only thing we have to decide is, one, do we want to put this forward to the council? And then do we, this committee, want to recommend to the council that we seat fund it and go forward with a recommendation that the city adjusts the rate, the annual rate, so as to pay that seed money back in some time period, basically. And then I would suggest we stop worrying about, is 400,000 enough? Is 500,000 enough? There's cities out there that are managing this already. So I'm sure Rick, in dealing with them, can figure out the rest of that. It's just what do we want to make a recommendation to the council for about the seating it or not?
I think you're right on point there. I think the most important decision that needs to be made tonight is whether that will be on the ballot. But we do have additional time to maybe get that information for the next meeting as far as how it gets funded in 2024 to get the seed money in there so that at least we can assure there's coverage as someone makes a claim in the beginning of the year.
There's still time to get more information pulled
Yeah.
together, absolutely, to
So I
provide
think
that to
that would be
city
the
council.
case. I think a motion would be appropriate just for the item regarding putting this forward on the ballot. And then I think you can come back. I think that there might be some analysis. If you can talk to some of the other cities and figure out whether we need to target 1% or 1.5% or something like that. I mean, we want to be in a situation where we are not having to refund it again. And then we know that the city will be reimbursed. That's the whole intent. But that information will tell us whether it gets reimbursed in the same year or if it takes 2 years to do it.
Yeah, so I'll make that motion.
Okay, good. So Councilmember Jaxi is going to make the motion on the recommendation for, this is what, for the ballot language then, Rick, is that?
Well, that's what I was wanting to understand. Now, keep in mind, just confirm with John that we do have to pass an ordinance to get this on the ballot. So it's 2 readings. And your Edmond Public Works meeting is after the July.
Yep.
Your July meeting is after the July council meeting. So we'll have to go directly to the council with this.
So yeah, after tonight, this could go to the council with regards to the ballot language. And then we just have to work on the details of how to provide seed money into the program. Thoughts? Sound good? All right, you made a motion. I don't know. Councilmember Farmer is a second here. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is the proposal from Precision Concrete for sidewalk repairs.
Thank you, council members. This is a little bit less weighty. We've been talking about some very serious issues for the city. Not that this isn't important, but if you may recall, last year we hired Precision Concrete Cutting to work in 3 subdivisions of the city to essentially grind sidewalk joints to alleviate concerns with potential trip hazards. They did this in Garden Valley, Oak Ridge Trails, and West Hampton Woods last summer. I thought they did a sensational job with it. They got in, they got the work done, they got out. They were very clean with the work they did. The finished product is smooth. I'm not aware that we got any resident complaints relative to the work. So really liked the contractor and the work that they did. And one of the advantages of this contractor is that they come in and they essentially survey your sidewalks and tell you where you have the higher potential trip hazards that need to be addressed. So it saves us staff time of having to do that. So based on the performance last year, we asked them for a quote to do more work this year. And that's what I'm bringing to you tonight is a quote and a request to move forward with a contract with Precision Concrete Cutting in the amount not to exceed $25,000 to do work in Brentmore Place subdivision. That would be this summer, and they would alleviate those potential trip hazards that range from 3/8 of an inch to 2 inches on the sidewalk. So it makes our sidewalk safer. It's quick and very effective. And so that is the recommendation to the committee tonight, is to move forward with that agreement. And if you approve the recommendation, we'll have that in front of the city council as a resolution for passage at the next meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark. Okay. Second by Councilmember Farmer. So Michelle, you got that? Okay, any other discussion on the matter? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the motion passes. That concludes all the items, but one remaining item on the agenda, which is regarding the city admin search. So We do have an update for the committee that would require us to go into closed session. So I'll ask the city attorney just to make sure that I'm reading off the right RSMO section number for going into closed session here. So let me look for that. RSMO 610.021.13/1994.
Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be to go into closed section pursuant to section 610.021 subsections 1, 3, and 13.
Right, subsection 1, then 3, and you said 13. Okay, so we can get a motion for that. We'll require a roll call made by Councilmember Farmer, and then a second by Councilmember Jaxi. Michelle, can you do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
and Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
So we're going to go into the community room for the closed session there. And Councilmember Hopper, I can call you on the phone. I do see Councilmember Brost. If you want us to also call you, we can call you on that. And City Attorney Young, I may want to have you as well, obviously. So we'll call you on your phone.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead in there and we'll be back.
All right, so
All right, we're back again. So with that, then we are at the point where we've wrapped up all the 4 action items under administration and public works, including the 4 information items. So we will, anything under miscellaneous? Right? And next meeting will be Tuesday, July 11th. So motion to adjourn, made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you and have a good night.